So I think, so first of all, I want to give some time to allow each of the speakers to introduce themselves and touch on any of the pertinent subjects they want to raise during the session. So I know Eva has some slides that she wants to go through as well. So if you'd like to do that now, please do.
Should I start?
Yeah, if you want to, yeah.
Good afternoon. I expected as a last presenter, but it's nice to be the first. Before I start my presentation, I have only one very interesting thought related to the keynote speaker. I was in Milton, Keynes more than 20 years ago. I studied distance learning. Milton Keynes was famous and still famous about distance education. And it was a very nice, calm city, green, healthy, with good air. And now, after this presentation, I feel a big boom happened there and around the surrounding. And I don't know how many years ago it was planned to increase such a way the city mobility and the business and the study as well. So maybe later we will talk about that. My presentation focuses on cities, regions, air quality, carbon footprint, and health. The Clare City is a Horizon 2020 research and innovation project, and the title is very interesting. Citizens-led air pollution reduction by citizens. So we would like to reduce what we have at this moment in different cities and regions, reduce the pollution, reduce the carbon footprint, reduce the energy need, to have better health. So this is the short title of the project. And first, normally, we show at the end the different logos and the institutes we collaborate, but because it's an international event and the European processes also ask for engage more different countries, cities, regions to work together, and institutes. So it's quite a big consortium, leading research institute from NILU, also from Bristol, leading institute from Italy, Belgium, one from a regional environmental center in the region, playing important role in environmental-related issues and sustainable development-related topics and issues. And Denmark, one of the leading institutes dealing with carbon management. And the next ones are the most important, because there are really who are using the research results, cities, regions. We have Amsterdam, quite a big city, Bristol, not too far from Milton Keynes. We have Ljubljana, more south in this part, might you visited. We have Sosnowiec, northern, in the Silesian area, quite polluted in Poland. And we have two regions, one in Italy, and we have one in Portugal. Liguria was the Italian, and Aveiro, the region in Portugal. It's nice to see the map. And we say that, why? Why these cities, regions work together? What is the common problem issue they tackle with? The issue is the air quality. The issue is the carbon footprint. The issue is health. What kind of health issues we have and read in the newspaper all the time? If you look at this slide, I just used one of the slide on the leaflet, but the text is from WHO, World Health Organization. I am external expert of the European WHO. And they always write about how many deaths we have in Europe and in globally due to air pollution. It's increasing. It's 700,000 in Europe, and globally, very high number. I think there is a mistake in this communication, because we have to deal with this issue much earlier, not only when people die. We need a very strong preventive concept to have healthy people in healthy city, in healthy region. So this is why we work in this project. And as I said, the citizen-led air pollution reduction in cities. And we put citizens in the middle of the issue and the problem. And we ask them, come, work with us. Work with policy measures. Help the city, municipality, and the region administration to develop good policy for the future towards 2050. So let's see Milton Keynes in 2050. Quite complicated process was developed by the researchers. This picture tried to show this process, what we have together. Always the end is important. 4 years we have together, just finishing the third one. The expectation is to have a policy package for the city and the regions, including different policy measures, how to reduce the current air pollution, how to reduce the carbon footprint, how to reduce the energy use, and how to change the current transport and mobility. So it's about life of people. Of course, the business is, as usual, is in the middle of the problem, but together with the life of people. So we expect this outcome, and we will offer for other cities, regions in Europe and outside of Europe. So quite ambitious. How to go towards this end? Next April in Brussels, probably it's possible to present. The first step 1 and 2, what is the situation? Where are we now in the cities and regions? What kind of policies we have? What kind of behavior of people we have? What kind of systems we have? What kind of planning we have in the cities and regions? And what is important to change to go to the better end? Very long, very complicated questionnaire. I just signaled one very important part is a Delphi design. I am sure you know very well that Delphi design is a strong research tool. We are asking people online. We organize workshops. We develop different scenarios for the future. Mutual learning is my favorite. My organization was still responsible for that, to organize meetings, workshops, and ask people about how they imagine their city and regions towards 2050. A lot of good discussion. This Horizon 2020 project and research and innovation. So we said that we have to develop innovative tools. The project developed the game and an app, like as an innovative tool. What is the game? You, as a client, a user of the game, sit at the computer, but you are challenged to find out the future of Bristol, for example. Bristol really have a big problem with mobility, transport and mobility. They would like a very clean air, zero carbon city towards 2050. So how is it possible? What kind of cars, buses they should introduce? Of course, electric, but where will they have the electricity? Somewhere it is produced. So just moving from one point, the problem to other. But let's see. The app is really interesting. It's close to the transport and mobility issue. So you have your app. You are in the middle of the city. You came by car, try to park. It's not easy, especially in Budapest, but it will be better, I am sure. And you look at your mobile phone, and you see what kind of air quality you have around you. Today, the PM10 is very high, so if you visit the meteorological information on the right website, you know, I am not proud of that, but it's a situation in many cities. And you receive information about NO2 concentration because of the seasonal and then the transport in the city. And you receive information about your health. What will happen with you if every day you come to this place? We can continue that. It can be going to the school, the kindergarten, the workplace, etc. We expect people to change their behavior, and they're moving probably by tram or underground if possible, not by car. We don't expect people to change to electric car only, because it's not the final solution towards 2020. So we have different methodology, and in the work package 7, we have different scenarios we will but it's not the end. Sometimes when we have the workshop and we have scenario 1 and 3, and we know where to go, but the quantification part is important. Is it possible really to reduce the air pollution with such a figure, what is expected in the scenarios? Do we have really good methodology? Do we have enough money? What is the situation in the city? It's a growing, like Bristol, it's really a growing. Or Sosnowiec are more older people, so it's a European issue is there with the generational issue. So the quantification group tried to tell us answer is a good scenario or is unrealistic scenario. And after this quantification, we really have the policy package at the end. We hope. So this is the design. I love the project and everybody who is involved. It's a huge, very big project, and we hope the benefit for us. We will have a better health, better life, more sustainable, good quality of life. This is all what we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva, for really in-depth look at the new air quality project. That's really pertinent to us in Oxford because we're also aiming for a zero-emission zone by 2030, so we'll have to talk about that later. Zuzana, I wondered if you wanted to introduce yourself and to some of the work that you're doing at the InnovEYtion Centre.
Sure, thank you very much. Thanks a lot for that. I'm leading the InnovEYtion Hub, that is a regional center for piloting new technology and basically bringing tangible results not only to private sector representatives but also public sector representatives. This means that we don't want to only talk about new technologies and how everything's done in the UK or in Denmark, because that's usually the case. We really want to bring it to our region, and we want to support the stakeholders to really test it, to really feel it. Because sometimes when you just describe things on the paper, it's very difficult for them to understand what's really tangible results that specific technology can bring. Yeah. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring really end-to-end solutions, so really providing services from identifying the technology, identifying the business models, but also methodology and legal framework and financing. And that's something I would like to talk about later on more.
Yeah, sure. Great. I think Brian's probably done a good introduction of everything you do in Milton Keynes. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, hopefully I gave an introduction of what I'm up to in Milton Keynes. But some areas that I didn't touch on in my talk was I very much look at business models for developing these new transport systems. It's all great about doing the technology, but how do you make them sustainable and deliverable within the city context? And the other aspect that we're exploring very seriously within the city is working with the communications industry, IT, what will 5G bring for the city? Will it enable more mobility solutions? So we've got some exciting projects developing that capability to go alongside all the modes I described.
Thanks, Brian. And Zoltán, please give an introduction to the work that you're doing and anything you'd like to touch on in the panel.
So thank you very much. I am working at the JRC and working on a whole topic of technology and digitalization. But may I just go back to your presentation, what I heard? I was very fascinated. I have been only once in my life in Milton Keynes, in a way that I arrived at Luton Airport. After that, I rented a car, and I wanted to go to Cardiff. But it was the first time when I was driving on the left-hand side. So I arrived, instead of Cardiff, to Milton Keynes. So, but no, I know that it is really worth to see what is developing in Milton Keynes. And just going back to the whole topic, what we have, tradition and innovation, I think that you are very fortunate because it is a planned city. Maybe it goes back to the British history of garden cities, garden city movement. I am not sure in that case, even as the whole world had this idea. And that means you have also the space for that, which when you compare with Budapest, with this history, with streets, it's maybe a little bit difficult to have such a concept. But generally, it is in line with the concept what we are thinking at the JRC. In the JRC, in June, we will publish a flagship publication, Future of Cities. And according to the mobility, we think that, the so-called access will be important. A, for automated mobility, C, for connectivity, connectedness, E, for electricity or electrified, and S, for shared. So access not written really correctly in English, but that means these are the most important points. And just one point to your presentation, which I think it's worth to consider. It was just one point that 55% of the people, the respondent think, when they will sit in the driverless car, they will watch the scenery. No? That I am not sure that. I think they will rather watch some electric gadgets or something different. And what I want to say with that all these technologies, these robot delivery, driverless cars and so on, they are time-saving technologies. Yeah. They will save us time. And second question, what we will do with this free time? Maybe more mobility. Right. That is somehow an additional mobility demand will develop because we will implement technologies which save us time too.
Yeah, I think that's that's a really key point because I think we think that it's going to drive a productivity uplift, particularly in the UK where we've had productivity pretty stable in the last decade. But maybe it will just allow us to do more or less productive things, and it's an unknown at the moment. But you do draw me on, one of the questions I wanted to ask was, so this is about balancing tradition versus innovation, and particularly in transport, that's a field that I know particularly well, but in all the areas of growth, do you think there's an opportunity where innovation actually allows for a more traditional approach? So thinking of for mobility, can we use new innovation to actually allow us to just walk and cycle more easily? That would be fascinating to hear views on that. Maybe Brian to start.
Yes, I think there is an opportunity. I think I tried to bring it out with the example of the electric cycles in Milton Keynes. Yeah. We do have a fantastic cycle network, but it's hardly used. I pointed to the fact that it's low-density areas, so distances are often quite severe for somebody who might not be used to cycling, and the form of the routes are such that they're for leisure. Now, to get over that, does electric vehicles give you the confidence that it's assisted, it's not wholly electric, so it's part of the way, so you can go distances, and that's now providing attraction for users to take up cycling.
Yeah.
Another unintended but good consequence of the robots, the Starship delivery robots, they operate on pavements. They have sensors, cameras, so they know absolutely everything that's around them. One of the reasons that we're told in our city why people don't walk on our footways and roadway is the fear of crime. Now, what we're starting to measure in the routes that these robots operate to do their deliveries, pedestrians now know those routes are under surveillance. There's a robot there measuring cameras. Yeah. So it's bringing people, so I'm encouraged to walk on that route because there's a means of me being surveyed on this. We've got to be careful it's somebody watching over you, Big Brother type approach, but we rather think that's a positivity that's come out of it, and no transport planner forecast that.
No.
It's just by doing these demonstrations, experiments, and taking, sometimes our politicians take pretty brave decisions to allow these to happen, and we're starting to see a whole host of benefits.
I know, Zuzana, was reading on some of the projects that you're looking at, particularly in Hungary and Slovakia, and I wonder if there's any projects that have come out through the innovation projects that have sort of tried to tackle these sort of clashes between tradition and innovation.
I think coming from the, sorry for that, but communistic countries, I think we really see that innovation is bringing the history back, right? Because if you look at the concept of sharing economy, that's what we used to have here, right? Yeah. So I think for us it's kind of funny to observe this trend, but I think it's really a future for us. Because as has been said, maybe in UK, but not in our region, or I think now that the cities themselves are very limited. So I don't think that the hero of 21st century is going to be a building company. It's going to be really more a tech company or data-driven company that is really able to provide either new technology or new business models, or new concepts such as sharing economy. Because we are not able in Budapest or in other cities, we're really not able just to broaden the roads or infrastructure. It's not as easy anymore, right? Yeah. So that's why I think we really need to rely on new technology or even new business models, because innovation does not necessarily mean only technology. And when we're discussing this with the city representatives, we have to be very careful about telling them that, we're not just going to put sensors everywhere, because that's not the point, right? It has to make sense. So you really have to think of what is going to bring to you, what is the purpose of that.
Yeah, great. So I was wondering as well, in terms of air quality, as I was saying, that's a really pertinent issue for myself as we're trying to tackle. We're trying to deliver a very ambitious target of a zero emission zone by 2020 and then to 2030. Is there anything similar there where you're seeing innovation being able to drive that much more quickly? Clearly you touched on it in the talk a bit as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very valid question. So if we look at the list of policy measures, the different zero-emission zones in the middle of the city, or environmental zones called in Amsterdam, because we have different technological words for that. They try to develop and subsidize who can go there, or how much they have to pay, or nobody can drive there. But I would like to go back to the innovation and the technological innovation. It's very important for us to understand. Innovation is for us, for people, for city regions. We use there, we live there. So it's not innovation for technology, better car, and to have different robots, etc. It is my understanding. But how to use the robots and these cars? It's very important to help our life, to have better life. So, okay. The robot will bring something to my house, and I can do some exercise or read and learn languages, etc. So we should not isolate one thing. We have to see together the cities, the regions, the human being, the family. One traditional has effect, not good one, using the car and polluting, but this electric car, very beautiful anyway. I would like to try Milton Keynes if I have the possibility. to know it is for something what we change. We don't want to use cars using carbon-based material. We would like better city and regions. So I think it's very important. Don't isolate. And back to the zero emission and zero emission-related environmental zone in Amsterdam or in other cities. It's heavily discussed everywhere in all cities and regions and proposed. And the beauty in the project, it's not from top down. The municipality decide. No, together, expert groups, stakeholders, citizens, they develop, and also like with this climate change issue and problem and the Paris Agreement, when will be the reduction as we expect, otherwise we will not survive. So the pathway, how to go there. We have the current conditions and we have the wishes and dreams, and it's very important to decide in 10 years' time, 20, 30 years' time, what is possible with the contribution and involvement of citizens and stakeholders. And I think, and during this time, we will have more innovative other robots, etc. Robot is not far from me because we have grandchildren having competition with Lego and working with different very interesting equipments. So it is future what we, especially me in my age, maybe I cannot imagine. So I have very long ears and listen to the new generation, young people, to learn from them concerning the robotica, because they are really good innovators.
Yes.
So one of the things that hearing yourselves talk today and earlier today through the conference and from the work we do at home as well is that with innovation and future cities and the way things are changing so much, what you're getting industries colliding. So with transport, you have to deliver a lot of our ambitions in transport. We're going to have to sort out the energy system as well, and then also the connectivity, the digital connectivity as well. So it'd be really interesting, Zoltán, to hear your thoughts on sort of what's the key core infrastructure that we have to get right before we can actually step forward?
So just think of it a little bit back to 40 years. 40 years ago, we asked, what sort of car do you have? Do we ask today, what sort of mobility solution do you have? I think we are a little bit far from that. We are somewhere at a turning point. We don't ask each other, someone inside, what sort of mobility solution do you have? You would like to build a mobility solution, and I do think that for cities it's important to find a mobility solution or provide mobility solution for everybody, which are in that case shared, electrified, connected, and with all these things. But I would maybe widen a little bit our perspective when we are talking about smart cities, city developments, and transport and mobility. That we are thinking very concentrated what is happening in the town, what is happening in the city. But there are other technologies, the technological development, which influence our way of life, which has also influence on our mobility. The new technology makes it possible, for example, for more people teleworking, which could reduce the demand for mobility. Yeah? Because your starting point was that Milton, Keynes is today 270,000 people, it will be 500,000, and it will increase the demand, so and so. But in the meantime, there will be in the technology also other developments, let's say teleworking and the others, which has also influence on the demand. So I would suggest when we discuss as a whole the smart city development, we should also somehow include the other technological developments and the influence on that.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think you're moving from mobility more to just connectivity, and that can be and it's how you deliver services to people as well. And so thinking about the work you're doing, Zuzana, I know some of the experience I've had in the UK is trying to work out how you start to finance some of this innovation across all the different markets. So we're seeing a concentration of new business models happening in urban areas where you've got the critical mass, the infrastructure. How do you get those benefits out into the suburbs and the rural areas, as in the challenge of the panel?
So recently we've been cooperating with the European Investment Bank on the project to create an investment platform for smart city, smart region, now in Croatia, even smart islands.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, it's an amazing project because you would say that, of course, bigger cities such as Budapest, Bratislava, Prague, or London, they, of course, are able to attract even private sector investors. They are able to attract the international financing institutions, but then really take into consideration smaller settlements, villages, towns, and even smaller cities. For them, it's very difficult to get to the amount of the investment that would be really attractive for private sector investment, and thus leveraging the public sector investment. Also, in this region, we are so much used to just finance our projects through grants. And basically, if you take into consideration that our operational program has been agreed with the European Commission 7 years ago, 2012, basically, partnership agreement, and the specific operational programs. Somebody was talking back then about smart cities, no one basically. So then now we want to finance smart city or smart regional projects, but we do not have financing for that, because these operational programs are limited just to certain areas.
Yeah.
And of course, if you want to talk about smart, that means integrated, right? Yeah. So how you want to finance this if you have operational program channeling or targeting the environment, then you have energy efficiency, then you have transport, and if we're going to talk about the integrated transport system, then as you said, there are camera system, there are environmental sensors, and so on. So it's very difficult really to finance the smart city projects, and of course it's amazing to talk about them, but we need to find this financing. And that's why we came up with this new financial instrument, where we not only aggregate the projects, or really smaller projects, in order to reach the investment volume that is necessary for the either international or even national development banks to finance such a project, and also to attract the private sector investments. And for me, it's very important because I have to say I'm not a really big fan of grants, especially on region. I think they really causing a big distortion of the market. Of course, they're very relevant, for example, for R&D, as we discussed, really research and development in new technologies, even for mobility solutions. However, after that, sometimes it's really causing the distortion of the market. And if you take even the mobility projects, and we discuss it how it is in UK, private sector investments, they are interested in financing those projects, because we need to find repayable models. We need to find the business models that are really generating the revenues for those where it is possible, of course, not for all. And there, the private sector investors are really happy and keen on coming into picture. So the investment platform is really a structure where we are leveraging and blending the financial instruments coming from the public sources, meaning either EU, European Investment Bank, national development banks, and the private sector investors. Yeah. And what is more important for me is the element, which is the first element, that's the technical assistance, because we cannot just expect that we would be coming as investors and saying, guys, give us projects. They're not ready. How can they be ready if we were just focusing on the grants for now, right? So this technical assistance element is really here to support even smaller municipalities to really develop the business case and the operating model that is going to bring the revenues.
I think that we had a discussion early on about the role of cities in this development of these new transport mobility solutions. And the projects we've run in Milton Keynes test them, are they viable? But alongside that, we're trying to create a high-level business model. I've got a simple view on it, and I'm not an economist, and my finance director thinks, thank goodness. But basically, our city is growing that will have 2 million people journeys every day. There must be a market for that. What is the solutions? Come and work with us to deliver the solutions. Because you mentioned working from home. I know when I work from home, my car doesn't sit on my drive all day. My wife goes shopping in it. Yeah. But the journey has changed. So how do you understand and develop all these? And the conditions and the role of the city might be to fall back to regulate these new systems to ensure they're safe, inclusive and environmentally sound. And that's in broad terms, the step back, work with the innovators, create the conditions, and so long as they'll meet those city challenges or objectives, then it's up to work in partnership to get them over the line as a viable business model.
So do you think, so we're seeing the way, a change in the way people live. We were talking on the last session even about, everything is a service. And that's that's the tagline now, isn't it? And so you're getting these different ownership models, and you're breaking away from owning things to almost just buying into them when you need them. And so do you think that increase in flexibility can happen across all the different areas, or is it going to be focused on urban areas and you'll have a different ownership model in rural areas because it doesn't quite work in the same way? It'd be interesting to see, so it's really fascinating to hear about what's happening in Finland, as they seem to be further ahead than we certainly are in the UK, but interesting to hear if you've seen anything like that. Maybe Zoltán, have you seen?
It could be. I do think that the ownership model could be different when you look at different size of the settlements. The smaller community and also in the bigger cities is different. But just go to you mentioned the financing issues and so on. May I raise just one point which was also mentioned today in early morning, data.
Yeah.
Because how is it working? It needs heaps of data. And data security is a question. Who owns the data? I do think that in that case, they are public or publicly owned data. These machines are communicating with each other and so on. So it needs somehow the data protection. And it's a crucial point in that case, just coming back to your question with ownership, that this data should remain publicly owned. So that's the crucial point in that. Financing is important, the planning situation is also important, and I do think that in that case we should be very careful that this data remains in public hands, in well-managed in public hands. The whole platform economy is working in this logic. What we have currently, and you mentioned that, okay, when we would like to look for parking place in Budapest, etc., we just download an app and so on, but it is used our personal data by private companies. No, in that case, maybe would be important that these data, which are very important for smart cities, remain in public hand.
And do you,
very quick comment on this one, because that's very, very important. If we want to talk about smart cities, data is basically, it's the currency, right, for that. So vendor lock-in is actually a huge challenge, especially talking about the region where I have the experience. It's really, you have contracts that are signed for 30 years under specific conditions that are not really favorable in terms of providing openly the data or being able to use them publicly. So I think this is something that we need to push, and maybe there is also space for regulators. Again, as we were discussing, right, like regulators coming into picture and really establishing the regulatory framework for open data. I think this is really very, very important.
And is that government's role? Is it to be a regulator, or do you think government should get more involved in actually the protection of the data, but also opening up data where it's possible?
Yeah, regulators should be more involved, but the regulators should see all these as an opportunity. The new challenge is, I do think, in the whole platform economy, how to develop, how to use the model of platform economy, what we have, in public sector, let's say transport, health, education, and many others. Yeah, that's a crucial question when we would like to develop much smarter cities.
And something that I think we struggle with, and I don't think I have the answer, is the true value of the data. Because the expectation from some data providers is the value of the data is way up there. Others think it might be down there, and it's how you get that position point that's everybody's comfortable to get the nirvana that data is open and available to everybody, and you can extract the value at a reasonable cost and price to pay. So value of data, I think we need some work on how that is understood and taken forward.
And Eva, I know it's really important in terms of air quality, in terms of real-time data.
Yeah, I would like to tell two things. So just because we started to think about cities, big cities, small cities, and rural area, we had two regions in the Clear City project, as I mentioned, Aveiro region and Liguria region. In Aveiro region, there are 12 cities, smaller, bigger. So like a little bit of rural and big city. And it was very interesting to see how this network, because they are in network, try to work in the project and try to do the planning towards 2050 together. The problem was that the original planning was by very great planners having all technicalities on the table, but not knowing really what is the need of the city and the region. And due to the European mobility efforts, integrated mobility plan, but we all planned in several cities, regions also learned how to work together, or anyway started. The planners, the politicians, and the stakeholders were really to see what is the need of the city, the regions, etc. So I find the networking and contently networking is very important. The other is monitor what we do. It's in the integrated mobility planning process. There is a great guideline. It's very good, very nicely prepared. We all use that, I hope. If not, no problem. There are different versions. So monitoring what we are doing every second year, to have targets, indicators, and to know where we are. If the idea is not good, turn back and do another plan. And I think it's very important. And there was some correspondence among us during the preparation a few days ago, how important is the data, the correct data to have, and also the monitoring. In the Clear City project, I presented, we have some delay with quantification because we have the global data on different air pollutants. We have a little bit of the regional one, the local data. We don't have that because there is no monitoring of several pollutants in the city. What are we talking about? How can we reduce the PM10 if we don't have data? NO2, okay, but ozone, we don't monitor also in several cities. So having proper data with enough frequency is very important, up to the country, regions, municipality to decide, and also continuous monitoring with the same harmonized methodology, otherwise we cannot compare. So these are very important, and I connect it to the regional development that because in Aveiro and also in Liguria, it's more difficult issue, and they take it on the floor and they work on that.
Yeah. I was just looking at the poll up there, that we've got the polls running. And it's interesting going back to your point, Brian, about what people might do if it was an autonomous vehicle. That's the majority of people are commuting above 30 minutes. You've got 15% people commuting over an hour. And so do you think that as autonomy comes in, if it does come in, that you might end up with people actually moving further away from where they work?
Yes, by the way, I agree with what you said about 55%. They won't look out of the window every journey. They'll soon get fed up of that and want something else to do. But it does give that dynamic that if you're having productive time in the vehicle, then your choices of where you live and commute from are going to open up because you're not losing that time. You can do something useful, whether that's agile working, doing the shopping online, or whatever. So it does. I think as transport planners, we've got to think about the consequences of that. And again, that was the purpose of the demonstration and project we undertook in Milton Keynes. It wasn't to answer all the questions. it was probably to raise more of the new ones that we've learned a little bit. But what does this open up as a question we need to answer? And that's one of them. What would you do with that time? What, again, thinking about the business model, what is the opportunity for businesses to use that time within the vehicles to almost have a captive customer? But what will the customer accept for that?
And do you think there's an opportunity for, so we're seeing a global trend of increased urbanization. I think in well-established countries, long-established countries like the UK, it's still increasing slightly, but not, it's plateauing. But do you think that ability to have, connectivity, so really good digital connectivity, and the ability to maybe definitely be efficient while you travel, might actually enable a rejuvenation of rural areas? Because I know you see that in parts of Europe where you have towns and villages and rural areas that are sort of becoming ghost towns, partly also because of the demographic changes as well.
So, in general, I do think that the key word is time saving in the whole issue. I know that the air pollution and etc. and congestion, that everything is important, but what really will change the society and our way of life, that how these technologies, and not just what we are using as in a smart city, will give us more time, and how we will use this more time. Just think back in the 50s and the 60s. We had technologies, wash machine, microwaves, and so on, and it saved the time for women, mostly. And now it had the possibility that the women in a huge number could go to the job and so on. And it transformed the whole society, what we have today. Yeah? So I do think that what is beyond these whole issues, that the time saving, that this fact will change the society, and we'll have also new challenges for transport. But when I was just listening to this discussion, I was thinking on that maybe we should consider really the significant difference when we implement this whole idea, smart cities, in a planned city or in a greenfield investment in a way. Which is really brand new, and you build every facility, stations, batteries, and so on, to the new ideas, connected, electrified, shared, and so on. And what we can do in a city with a history built, let's say Budapest or Prague or others, they need quite. I think they need not just the adaptation of the model what you have, but maybe they need new models and new partners. Sharing is okay in big cities. Using bicycles and so on, it is also more or less okay. Electrified is a little bit more difficult in that case, and also the autonomous driving will be more complicated, I do think, in a large city than in a, let's say, planned city, or where you can easily adapt, or the new technology that you can easily adapt to the environment. So maybe it would be useful also in the future to consider what we can do to how should we transform the technology which could be adapted to the large cities.
And just picking up on something you said there, in the research we looked at with the capability of autonomous vehicles now, and they're not that capable. There's still a long way to go. But given their cautious way they're operating, and it's been likened to somebody who's just passed their driving test, that's the capability of an autonomous vehicle at the moment. But that suggests where you have congested cities with slow-moving traffic, the penetration of autonomous vehicles is likely to be in congested cities in the early days. The other area is on fast-flowing motorways.
Yeah.
So there's two areas where the industry is saying these are where they will emerge first.
Yeah.
And as the capability goes up, that's when they will become more and more ubiquitous. You will then start withdrawing any infrastructure you decide you needed to regulate them safely in the cities. So I think there's a growing feeling that the strategy of how they will be introduced into cities and rural areas is starting to emerge. Now that's got to be tested a little bit more, but you can see a way forward for this technology. And again, it's perhaps for the cities and local authorities. So, well, if we now understand that, how can we prepare for this? How can we understand the transition? What do we need to do to our highways to accelerate all the positive things that this new technology will deliver, and manage away the negativity things of them?
Mm-hmm.
If I can comment on that, I think that's why we also have the concept of multimodality transport system. So when we, and also in this region, I'm happy to say that we're also testing autonomous driving. You have the test lab here in Hungary. We have also in Czech Republic. And I think highways, of course, because as you rightly said, in the dense city, it's going to be very difficult to start with autonomous driving. But we are now testing on the highways. So that's why using then the multimodality transport concept, you know, you would use autonomous driving coming from the villages, so ghost cities, so people can move back, and they would be using the autonomous driving to transfer them through highways. Then you have park and ride, so you have the parking spots that are around the city, so you won't have too many cities coming into the city center, also not causing then the air pollution, so really protecting the environment. So from park and ride, you can then either take the bike, so you can use the bike sharing concept, you can use e-bikes, or you can of course use sharing, taxis. We already have many apps. So this multimodality transport concept, I think, are going to really evolve more and more, and we would be using new technologies gradually, I would say.
Yeah, when you said saving time, it was in my mind saving life. The reason, the way how we live in big cities is really not healthy. In many cities, the speed is really very high. And if we look at the mobility, for example, it's just the magic making with technology. I am sitting in the metro and I feel as a calling center because everybody is using the mobile phone for something and talking. So it's not good for normal life. It's a technology. It's something new, but people using in a wrong way. So I agree with you, saving time for better quality of life, for example. It's good to think on that. So why we transport mobility takes a long time. Sometimes I travel 2 hours to my working place, so maybe I am the winner. But I read and plan and work, etc. And you have long distance trip to Sosnowiec, 7 hours from Budapest, you can try. There is good plugging system and you can work. So sometimes the technology is really helpful, such a way you don't feel that, oh my God, I traveled 7 hours to Sosnowiec. No. I traveled wonderful, so wonderful landscape, and I was able to work. So such a way I feel technology is helpful for normal life. So we have to have this kind of glasses to see together the whole concept and daily routine, and tell that saving time for something and still have better quality of life. So I think it's top important for all of us.
I know you can ask questions on the app, but if people don't have the app, I think we are able to take questions from the floor if anyone wants to ask questions. If anyone does have any questions? That's right.
I wish to turn to Brian. Is there a happiness index measuring the average well-being in your beautiful city? So you mentioned that some of the people like very much these new technologies, I am sitting in front of you. Hi.
Yes,
It's very bright.
Yes, I can. The lights. So yes.
The most important thing, and you heard also from their sides, whether we use better the time, whether we are happier, not simply healthier and happier. So it's one thing that you try to modernize the technologies for transportation, very good, but the most important one, the increasing number of the people in the vicinity of your beautiful city and within the city will be happier, will enjoy much better their life, whatever they use the extra time. That's the important. So how you measure that? Are you sure that it's not simply a more modern life, but it's also a more humanistic life? That's the basic question. Thank you.
Yes, and absolutely. The reason we do and develop these technologies and systems and mobility is to improve the quality of life of all our residents. That's the primary focus of our city, and we're run by politicians who rely on votes to run the city, so they need to address the concerns and happinesses of the city. I've worked in Milton Keynes now for over 20 years, and my previous roles in transport meant that I came across some pretty miserable people in Milton Keynes. The buses don't work in a low-density city with the form of our city. We have, although I expanded on the fact that we're a well-to-do, wealthy city, we still have areas of deprivation. We have 20% of our population without a car. We have 50% of our households with one car, and that's normally driven to work and parked there. So there's mobility deficiency. So our objectives around exploring this mobility is not just for it's something Brian's interested in, he wants to do that. It's about improving the lives and mobility of all our residents. So if you take autonomous vehicles, which I didn't touch on, it opens up this mode of transport for those who can't or don't want to drive. And we're an aging city. We know our demographics are going to be that we're all living longer. We're going to get far more older people who want to be active. As a country, we're saying we want people to work longer because we can't afford pensions. So we've got to provide the mobility. The robots I mentioned, again, some of the aspects, we're very pleased that the company is making a profit out of it, but we're working with them and say, well, can you help people stay in their homes by giving essential deliveries, medicines, all those aspects? Can you go out on our pavements, and this is about encouraging walking again, and use your sensors to detect every time you go over a bump, you report that to our highways maintenance team, and they go out and mend the footway. So we're very, very much in mind that this is all about the happiness and quality of life of all our residents. So it's not just a technology experiment for the sake of it.
There's a question up on the that's come through. So can the principles of compact urban living and the principles of environmentally friendly solutions be brought together? Yes. No.
Maybe just one point to it, to the happiness, and that is why I raised the question of the difference with a, let's say, planned city, or where there are more possibilities to adapt to the new technologies. And when you look at cities with long history, density, and so on, I'm a little bit afraid of, and I am not sure how the happiness will be with that influence. But in these cities, certainly sharing electricity, mobility, so many things could be implemented. But it's also unavoidable to use a very sophisticated pricing system, which adapts to the peak times, or maybe in a different way. It is also, I think, should be considered how our time schedule for work, for opening hours, and etc. Could be maybe shifted or changed as today normal to get less traffic. So maybe we should use also not just the top technology, but also a little bit down to earth, maybe sometimes costly, and solutions which I am not sure that will give us more happiness or not.
Yeah. That's sort of linked to that question about compact urban living. It seems to be with the pressures of urbanisation, we're just squeezing into smaller and smaller boxes and then finding really innovative solutions to that. But is that good? Does that make people happy? Or are we just doing it because we feel like we have to be in an urban area to get the job, to live to 80, to keep working? It's a very fundamental question, but that's quite sort of related.
And I think in Milton Keynes, that's something we've failed at. We've tried to do that. We tried to say, well, mass transit needs high-density housing because the traditional form is to run a bus every 20 minutes down this road. To make that commercially viable, we've got to compress the housing and increase the density. And that was a huge kickback from our population. They weren't happy about that one bit. So the politicians said, well, no, we've got to think about this in a different way. We love the city, how it is. How do we get the transport to adapt to the city rather than adapting the city to the transport? So this is where we start looking at on-demand transport that uses real-time data. So it's replicating what you can enjoy with your own personal car. But because we can then load the vehicles of 2, 3, 4, 5 people, give a dynamic service, it's a quality and a price that people can afford and willing to pay. So the question up above about is cheaper suburban, higher transport costs. I'd say, well, what we're trying to deliver as well is cheaper transport. If you can develop these models, commercial models that give you a better service, then I think that the market will drive that to actually a cheaper price. There's nothing more expensive than owning a car that you pay an absolute fortune for and you sit it in the car park for 20 hours a day. That, to me, in my mind, is poor economic sense, and that's where the expensive transport is, and so I think transport's very expensive now, and we're working towards bringing that into a more sustainable financial position so everybody can enjoy this new mobility.
And is some of the answer to if you're building in suburban areas, so you're further out, is some of that's about how you build the sites? So if you make sure that there's really good digital connectivity and some of the community and shared facilities that might allow you to work where you live, at least change your work patterns as well. So that's sort of, it's a key part of planning considerations, not just expecting that you'll drive in 5 days a week.
So the situation is much more complicated than this. There's not just work pattern will change by the new technology, but also the production will change. Yeah. And the new technologies make also possible to produce closer to the customer markets, which will have also a huge influence. Just think about the 3D printing. With 3D printing is, without any difficulties, would be possible that when I would need something, I just push a button and let's say 20 kilometers from Budapest, the robotized factory or the 3D printing, print it and bring to me. That means less transportation in a whole when you look at the whole region. That will also have some influence on the regional structure and also for the transportation. So what I wanted to say also at the very beginning, it's very useful when we think how can we make our cities or living space more smart, using smart technologies, but we shouldn't forget the wider context of the technology, how the technology influence our way of life, the time-saving effect, and also the feedbacks with that, how the production will be changed, and when we just a little bit widen the whole horizon and thinking about the regional structures and so on. I'm not sure that this kind of technology is classified as smart or not, but the high-speed railway is the most effective way for decentralization. Yeah? When we look at, really, we can talk many about decentralization. Also in Hungary we are discussing in many times, and also in our countries, because in our countries, also in the Czech Republic, so we have a big capital city, and this is always the problem with the decentralization and so on. How can we more decentralized structure to have? But the best way to it, when we have a high speed, let's say, well, not in Hungarian case, but between Prague and Brno, just with a high speed 1 hour, and the decentralization will work in a very good way. And after that, also the smart city solution in that. So what I wanted to argue for at the very beginning, it's very important to implement these technologies in the cities to create the smart cities, but we shouldn't forget a wider technological context.
That's why there is this concept of Hyperloop.
Oh, yeah.
You probably heard about it. It was announced by Elon Musk, right? A couple of years ago, he announced this competition, the open hackathon, open challenge for developing the high-speed train. They call it Hyperloop. So maybe, hopefully, we will have it soon. Let's wait.
I can't wait for trying to do Hyperloop in Britain. It's taken long enough to put high-speed trains 2 in, so trying to put a Hyperloop in, we might get it in by 21. Did you want to add it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and the previous one as well. What is better, to live in a city or at the countryside? It's depending on the family and your personality. Of course, if you don't have a job at the countryside, you have to commute to the city. If you like being card with your family, it's okay, but if you would like to go to the concert in the city, it's different, you have to commute. But if you have a good transport system in the network between your village and the city, it doesn't take too much time to travel. Maybe it's electric, and if you think about air pollution, etc. So this is the way how technology can help to have good quality of life. You can go to the city and have your job, and also go to the concert, but still live at the countryside. It's just one aspect, of course, it's obvious, but it's not just the magic immediately. It's a very careful planning, the whole area, very careful planning of transport to have access. It's a key point for everybody. We all would like to use less cars, I hope. So this is the issue. If not, we have to investigate more. Why? Because it's more comfortable to sit with your family in the car than travel on the train. Investigate how to have better train services, because it's also personality. I am sure there are several countries with good examples where there is a very good railway system and people can use that and not driving very often to the cities for the concert and the theater. So this is the technology should not be isolated. We need social research and investigate behavior of people, why yes and why no.
Yeah.
And how technology can help, yes, towards a better system.
And cost is really important.
May I just come back to this, that we have less car and so on. Shouldn't forget that the car is a symbol for the freedom, for a person, my personal freedom, that I can free move and so on. So when the car is a symbol for the personal freedom, we should have find something with the new technologies which is also symbol for the freedom. Maybe freedom for free choice between different mobility models and so on. So we can say that, okay, that the future we need less cars and so on, but in that case we need something for our freedom. Yeah? it could be also that okay, this is my freedom, that now I can choose between bicycle and walking and autonomous car and a robot, but I love very much. The robot delivery machine will bring to home all these things, and I shouldn't go to the shopping center, etc. So it is also a mental and societal changes because it was in the last 30 years and 40 years, and also currently we identified the personal freedom with the car to some extent, that all freedom to move. And now we have to something in the new age with the new technologies which give me or give us also a freedom in that case.
Yeah. I think we're coming to the end of our session, so I think what I'm taking home today is there's some still big questions over data and how we manage that. There's core infrastructure that we need before we can build on technology. Some technology may give us some ability to go back to traditional ways of life. And then also, probably the key thing is making sure that everything's driven from users, so the business models, and to take the gentleman's point, is it making us happier? That's a really valid point. I think that's really important. We should probably question that on everything. I might put that at the beginning of all our projects now. Yeah. Will it make us happier? So I'd ask everyone to thank our panelists.